Welcome and thank you all for joining us for this episode of the Crexi Podcast, an insider's look at all things commercial real estate. In this show, we cover a broad range of topics that cater to CRE newcomers and industry leaders alike. I'm your host, Ashley Kobovitch, Director of Partnerships at Crexi, and today we are thrilled to sit down with Bernadette Brennan of SERHANT Commercial. A little bit about our guest. Bernadette is the first and only managing director of SERHANT Commercial, where she brings over 2 decades of unparalleled expertise in both commercial and residential real estate. Recognized for her adeptness in navigating complex transactions and her commitment to excellence, Bernadette has been instrumental in acquiring listings valued at over $500 million in the past year alone, spanning trophy buildings, development sites, retail spaces, commercial offices, and investment sales. Under her leadership, SERHANT Commercial has flourished, with Bernadette acting as a mentor and a source of guidance, not only for her all-star commercial team, but also for SERHANT's residential agents. Through her mentorship, the team and agents have secured over $200 million in listings, a testament to her skill in nurturing talent and fostering an environment of growth and success. Bernadette's journey into real estate was preceded by a successful career in the music industry, where she managed music producers for iconic artists and achieved numerous platinum and gold record awards. A devoted mother and adventure seeker, Bernadette balances her professional achievements with a rich personal life, exploring diverse experiences with her family. Her transition from a celebrated figure in the entertainment industry to a leading force in real estate at SERHANT Commercial embodies her multifaceted talents and dedication. Bernadette Brennan is the epitome of leadership, expertise, and warmth, making her an invaluable asset to the commercial team at SERHANT, as well as the broader real estate industry. Bernadette, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. That was some setup.
It was amazing. Thank you for sitting down with us. We know how busy you are. So I just want to get a few more details about your background. So I know we covered a lot, but why don't you tell our listeners a little bit more about your career path and lessons you learned along the way? So let's start at the top. How did you first get started in real estate?
I got started in real estate over 2 decades ago. I was running music recording studios, and I was became a WeWork for musicians before there was a WeWork. So after 9/11, there was a lot of people leaving the city, and I thought someone might be crazy enough to give a 23-year-old young professional without any money in her bank account or any income streams a shot at a big lease in New York City. And I was right. They did. And I acquired one of the old VH1 production spaces, which was 4,000 square feet in the Film Center in the heart of Times Square, without even money for a security deposit. So I got the lease, and I went running around to producers and DJs and musicians that I knew. And I asked them if they wanted space, and I marked each room with masking tape. And I got 7 people to sign up, and I gave the money that I had got for security deposits to the landlord. And that started my music and my commercial real estate career.
Wow, that is impressive. I mean, I think that's just a true testament to who you are, right? How did someone give you that lease and then you just went around and did it and found the space and, found the tenants, so to speak, to, fill that space. That's an amazing story. I love hearing that. So how did that career, right, early on, you did music. How did that influence your approach to then real estate today?
Well, music is maybe the only thing, in my opinion, tougher than real estate, because everyone wants to be famous and almost nobody gets to be famous. Whereas in real estate, everyone needs a place to live and they'll all find a place to live. So when you come from music and you're used to cold calling, trying to get records cut for Madonna and Seal, Depeche Mode, Daniel Bedingfield, Cher, Britney Spears, all of those records we actually are credited on. But those cold calls and that discipline and waking up every morning with basically like, it was called the Postal Registry book, and we would just plow through the book. It was even before really there was Google. So we would just read the names and call all the record labels and, you know, get shot down and then call again. And eventually, you know, the discipline matches the drive, and then things start to happen. And so it really did train me for cold calling landlords and owners and investors. And it also helped me in being very used to hearing no.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, cold calling, I think, is just the floor and the kind of tenant blocks to any sales in general. So it definitely does translate. And, you know, hearing no's all the time to get to that yes definitely prepared you for how many cold calls you have to make in real estate, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Talk to us about what prompted that transition. So from the entertainment industry into real estate, why did you want to get into real estate? And then what were some of the challenges you faced during that shift?
So it was a long process of my love for real estate merging with my love for music. And for many years, I figured out how to blend it. So as I was saying, you know, earlier, I became a landlord to a lot of creative professionals, PR firms, music producers, DJs. And in being a landlord for them, I started practicing commercial real estate. And I realized, wow, I actually like this. And some months I would make more money as the landlord for these, you know, creative WeWorks than I would in the actual music business. And so my thought and my theory was always, if I rent enough rooms in my space, then I'll have a free office to work out of and build my business. Because I was a kid at the time, and I didn't have anything to fall back on, right? I had no family money. I had no bank account. This was my investment. So the easiest way for me to make it work was to get professionals to pay rent. And at a certain point, someone said, you know, you're practicing commercial real estate. Do you want to get your license? And I said, what is that? And then I said, okay, that's a good idea. Let me go get my license. And I didn't do anything with it because we were really breaking a couple of bands and like acts on the music side of things. And, you know, we were doing huge records for really big celebrities. So I was always like, real estate is glamorous, but it was always less glamorous than working for Madonna and Britney. So it was like this love-hate thing that I had with like loving real estate, but hating leaving music. And we went back and forth many times on it. And when Napster started coming out and digital downloads and the industry kind of started to crash, the record industry, and people stopped buying records and CDs, there was a shift in the market. And at that time, I was just like wanting to try something new. And a lot of records that we had a record for Rihanna. It was about Chris Brown. They broke up. That got slated. We had a record for Britney. She had some, you know, issues. That record got slated. Samantha Jade. There was like 4 records in a row that all of a sudden I thought I was going to have like the best year. I thought I was going to retire that year. And then not one record made the cut. And I said, something's got to give. Something's got to be different. And I just started doing real estate. And so I started doing a bunch of rentals. I started with rentals. I always think people should start with rentals. I think it's like a way to really like build your business, your book of business, your lingo, your ability to talk and communicate with people. So I always, even though, you know, it's somewhat taboo, and people right now that look at the listings I have are like, what is she talking about, rentals? But I think that's kind of what started me. And so I found, it was actually Larry Silverstein. It was right after one of the downturns in our market here in real estate. And they were offering something called OP, which means the owner pays. So I started renting up tons and tons of units at the Silver Towers residential. And, you know, Larry and Silverstein Properties would pay me, and that's how I got started. And so I was always doing music and then doing real estate, and it just gradually shifted more and more into real estate. And the checks are just bigger. So I also, like I said before, you know, you don't have to make a house famous. You don't have to make a building a #1 record. So when you're so used to that bar being that high, and literally I worked for Madonna for years. So it was like when you're used to working in that type of a demanding environment and you're working for the love of it, you're making some money, it's like enough to keep you going, but no one's retiring. And then you're like, oh wait, I could sell that apartment and make that kind of money. Like, that was when it started to really shift for me. Even just selling like $1 million apartment, the commissions were like $60,000. I'm like, let's go. To make 60 grand in music as a music manager was challenging. I mean, we had our upturns for sure, but that is kind of what forced me to have that transition from music into real estate. It was just easier to flourish in real estate, in my opinion, than it was to, keep building up bands that may or may not ever make it. And I still do have a deep love for music. And I credit a lot of what I've built and done and my entrepreneurship through music. I was super fearless when I started my music company. I opened it when I was like maybe 19, 20 years old. I thought if you had a business card, you had a business. So I was like, let's print some business cards. And that's what we did. So that was my transition into real estate.
Well, we're lucky to have you. And thanks so much for sharing, because a lot of people that, might be listening to this might be thinking about getting into commercial real estate. So that's a really good token for them to, be able to hear and share your story with us. So thank you. Now, going back into the music, I'm sure you've taken a lot of skills from there into real estate. So managing music producers, achieving platinum and gold records awards. I mean, that's no small feat, right? So how did those experiences shape your skills in specifically negotiation and management in real estate?
Those skills were definitely honed in the music years and my music era, because, you're dealing with a lot of different personalities, a lot of tough personalities, a lot of larger than life personalities. And so I didn't realize at the time, because I was younger and a little bit more of a hothead, but as I grew in the business, I started to realize that there's a lot of different people with a lot of different personalities. And just because you don't always see immediately eye to eye, trying to identify like the one thing that you have in common and then make that your driver. So that's been something that I've done, I'd like to think quite successfully here at SERHANT and also through my music career. So it's like, you start off in music and you're like, do you want to, hire us to do a production for, whoever, Britney? It's like, no, not really. Oh, okay, well, blah, blah, blah. Oh, well, not really. Oh, well, we just did this record. Oh, well, that's not good enough for us. And you find a common ground. And I think when we finally pulled Britney, it was off of something I had done for like, I think it was Nick Lachey. It was Jessica Simpson's boyfriend we had done a record for. And then somehow it was like, I don't know, the cousin of the A&R or something. But I was just like, I wouldn't stop until I found a connection. And so finding some sort of common ground when you're negotiating, I always think is like one of my strong suits, is finding something that you can both attach to that brings you on a similar side, as opposed to constantly competing for something that's challenging in a negotiation, is really kind of like what I honed in music. And really dealing with challenging personalities. So like when I deal with investors, these are the biggest investors in the world. They have everyone calling them every single day. You have 2 minutes to get them on a call and you have 30 seconds to win them over. So it's really not for the weak. It's not for the people that feel, oh, I'm going to be so offended if, he hangs up on me. I'm so used to people hanging up on me. It's like, that's okay. You'll call tomorrow. You'll need me. But I think me realizing and recognizing, while they're investors of a very, high status here, they're also people that need out of situations. They're people that are facing, foreclosures. There's people that have, loans that are defaulting. There's issues and, maybe health issues. A lot of my sellers actually, I have someone has a health issue or a family member with a health issue and they need out. And being able to see their side of it is something that I train my team on regularly. It's really easy to see your side, right? And why do they want to do this? But I've tried to master the art of seeing my client's side. So I always can feel their pain, literally. And I will tell them, I feel your pain. My first big listing, 19 West 55th Street, was a bank pre-foreclosure. And it was through a member of the Orthodox community that in traditional situations I wouldn't even interact with. And, you know, he was, you know, visibly shooken by what was about to happen with the bank post-COVID. And I said to him, sitting in a meeting, and I couldn't even shake his hand or touch him. So I really didn't know that I was going to get the listing. I said, I will take all of that weight that I see on your shoulders. You can remove it right now and you can hand it to me and I will deal with the bank from here on out. And he signed on the spot.
Oh, I have chills.
I saw, I actually do too. I just saw a need he needed help. And as big of an owner as he was, and you know, a lot of people say, oh, you know, he had $100 million to lose. It's like, well, you know what? Guess what? He's losing it, and it doesn't feel good, and it's not easy. So I always try to see what the real need is and the value I can add in a situation, and then I try to adapt my the way I'm going to approach this listing. And it's very specific, and it's very different for each buyer and each seller, but I try to approach them from that space of really, truly understanding what it is they need and then trying to assimilate what I'm doing with their needs, as opposed to just being like the same line. I'm going to sell your building. We're going to do this. We're the most followed this. We're doing this. I really try to connect with their need for selling, right? Because if they didn't need to sell, they wouldn't. So that's something that I think comes with time, but it's also something that I try to train on pretty heavily with my team of just understanding where someone else is coming from and meeting them where they're at.
I love that. And thank you so much for sharing that story. I think that hits on a lot of different lessons that have probably been really crucial to your success, right? In negotiation, trying to find a common ground, even if you don't agree with everyone, right? Because you're never going to agree with everyone. There's one thing that you can agree on, and trying to dig deep and find that. Second, you mentioned don't be afraid to get hung up on, right? Don't be afraid. You're always going to be there for that person if you provide that value. And then I love that last one where you're sharing that story and just really being empathetic, right? A lot of people just listen so they can respond, or they do just want to get the deal done, or it's cookie cutter in every single pitch that they're doing. And every client is not the same. Every owner, every investor is not the same. Every buyer is not the same, tenant, et cetera. So really understanding that need, being empathetic, putting yourself in their shoes, I think that's awesome to hear. So I know we just had a success that you shared with us. Do you have any favorite mistakes or moments that, while you maybe didn't recognize them at the time, turned out to be important lessons or potentially any course corrections for you?
Do I have any important lessons? Yeah. When I started my trajectory into real estate, because I was still doing music, I thought, I can't work for Douglas Elliman. I can't work for a big corporate brokerage. I can't give it full time. I was always like 1 foot in, 1 foot in, 1 foot in. Like I loved it, but I love music, but I loved it, but I love music. So I decided I would work for a smaller brokerage that would allow me to just kind of like feel it out and do my thing. And I worked with someone who I still to this day is like almost like a second mother to me. She's a partner at a real estate law firm called Grimble and LaJudas. And I hung my license with them. So I thought I'd get like all this great business, and I got a lot of business, but they were all very challenging because they were all going through court proceedings. So all the listings that I got were like the most challenging listings you could possibly imagine as like a newcomer ever getting. So like my first listing was a 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom, court take back of an apartment that had been hoarded by the mother and the son. So there wasn't one working bathroom, one working faucet. I wasn't allowed to open the refrigerator. It was 4 1-800 junk trucks to remove debris from their house. It was super challenging. It was my first listing, and I'm seeing Ryan on $1 Million Listing, and I was like, whoa, that's going to be so great. And then I got a $1 Million Listing, and I'm like, this is so not great. So dealing with, I'm a court-approved broker for Part 36, which is people that are not of sound mind to make decisions for themselves. And that is what happened in this situation. So I went into this incredible undertaking of cleaning up this apartment and clearing the apartment. It was a really tough situation because the sellers had been removed from their own premises, but they were still owners. So they weren't allowed in the building, but they were still owners. So dealing with just all of the mental angst that comes along with all of that this is my first listing. So my first listing ever is this situation. And I cleaned up the apartment, and everyone was like, you're not even going to get $1 million for this. This is like just really, not worth it. But it's a 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom in Sutton Place. So it is worth it to some people. Nobody thought I would even get $1 million. I got, I think it was 1.7 was my highest offer. And at the time, I was like, this is a done deal. It's like $100,000 or $150,000 my commission. It was like double-sided commission. I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm going to go buy something. I was already spending the money. No, wrong. They decided they weren't going to sell, even though they had to. And they were going to maybe let their cousin and his mother come in and help them on the attorney side and on the brokerage side. And I wound up in court for 3 years on the witness stand fighting for my commission. That is something that at the time was the most painful thing I've ever went through. I was like, I'm never doing this again. Like it was heartbreaking because I had done so much good work, in my opinion, for these sellers. Like, in my mind, I'm saving them. I'm saving their family, inheritance. I'm giving them, an out. And it didn't work out that way. So we wound up in court, and I didn't really know what to do because it was like, first of all, it's my first listing. So I'm just like, what is even happening right now? And I really thought I wasn't going to do brokerage anymore. And all these years later, I'm still reminded and will remind everyone of that story because it's who shaped me. It's what shaped me into the broker that I am today. Like, it's why I can deal with all these sellers. It's why I can deal with all these demise premises. It's why I can deal with all these, holdover tenant situations. It's something that has turned me into the broker that I am today, which is not your average broker. So took me years to recover from that because it was hard. But then it became my driver. Like I was like, let's go. Anyone else a hoarder? Anyone else need to sell their apartment? Like, let's do it. And believe it or not, I sold like probably 7 of those state apartments. And I became a court-approved broker for the Part 36, like I said. And it became like, it's one of those things that just defined who I am now as a broker. And it's someone who just knows how to really go below the surface to get a deal done. And it's to this day one of the most eye-opening experiences of my life. And it's something that I really credit to shaping me.
That is such an amazing story. I mean, there's so many things that you can take away there, being persistent, going through, picking up, yourself from your bootstraps, going in, cleaning that place, even when people told you you're not going to get anything for it. Then when you're almost at the finish line, having to go back into court and just doing anything. So, and just dealing with all those personalities, I'm sure has just every day been, a reminder to what you can overcome. So even though that was a terrible, situation, I'm glad that you took a lot away from that.
An interesting end to that story, not to cut you off, but is that
please.
an interesting end to the story is that after this happened, we decided that we didn't want to have anything be appearing as any conflict of interest between legal and the brokerage. And so that empowered me to go to broker school and get my broker's license. And I then went and I opened up my own brokerage from that experience.
There you go. There you go. And that's the icing on the cake. So I appreciate that. And I love that you just shared that with our listeners. So obviously, Bernadette, you've had such a successful career, many different aspects. You're also a mom. So being successful in your career, being a successful mom is very challenging. So how do you manage to excel in both areas? And what advice do you have for some other women trying to do the same?
It's very hard. It's not for the weak, and it's also very rewarding. So I worked since I was always trying to work since I was like 10, 11. I was like reading the papers, trying to get someone to hire me. Everyone's like, no, we don't want to hire an 11-year-old.
Same.
So really. So since I worked so long, I decided when I had my daughter, I would just kind of like set back a little bit. And I promised myself when she was ready to go to, I think she was 4, pre-K. I would put myself to broker school, and then that's kind of how I balanced that. With my son, it was different because now there's 2 kids, and now there's 2 people that need my focus, and 2 different pickups, and 2 different schools, and it's really challenging. And I try my hardest to be present for them, which often is just me at home dealing with calls. There's a lot of playground negotiations, I'll tell you that much. So most people think I have like a full-time nanny, I have full-time help. Like granted, right now I do have someone helping. They do go to camp, but I just never wanted to be that absent to them because they do rely on me. They're my children. And it was just never something that I wanted to just have not be, something that I'm super connected to. So even my team is like, you don't have a full-time nanny? And I'm like, no, I have to get home. The kids get out of camp at 3:30. I need to be pick up. And granted, like when they have camp pickup, like I will have the 2 or 3 hours in my apartment where I'm working and kind of making dinner, making calls, and, they're decompressing and whatnot. But for me, it's been really important to try to figure out that balance. So like I said, there's a lot of playground negotiations that happen. So it's become like a normal thing that people just know, like Bernadette shows up, she picks up her kids, she brings them to the park, and there will be within 5 minutes of her being there, a time where, she's taking a call, and some of them go better than others. But just being present so that my kids can still see me there. And there's an argument too about like being 100% there versus being 50% there. And it's another battle of my own of just being like how present is present. But I've also now figured out that I am in a situation in my life that I never honestly dreamed of being possible. I didn't think I would join SERHANT and get hundreds of millions of dollars of listings. And it's funny because my daughter even remembers like the more lean times where I was like, oh, I'm just selling the studio apartment. And that's also like its own feat in itself. But now she's like, Mom, this is like crazy. Like, you're doing all this stuff. So I think it's important that I do continue on my career path and also to show them like anything is possible. You can work hard. I tell my daughter all the time because she's also now at the age where she wants to start working. And I'm like, you know what? You don't really have to. Like, you can do your chores and stuff, but we work very hard, her father and I, to make sure that she's always provided for and she doesn't have to feel like that. But I am now trying to figure out a little bit more of a balance of being present with them while doing work, which is also why like now I have a team and now they do showings and they do setups and they do, help me with pitches and comping and that kind of stuff. I think empowering, and they've also gotten very used to, working with me while I'm making dinner or, yelling at my son for throwing something on the floor or whatever. But just trying to strike the balance. I'm not going to lie. It's really hard. One thing I have started to realize, 2 things actually, is one, if you're trying to really make it in a career and be a parent, let the laundry don't do the laundry. That's number one. So like I send out all my laundry. I have for years. It probably costs the same as if I was just to, pay for it myself with electric or whatever. That's number one. And number two is meals. So I've now started becoming like what I call like an angry chopper, because I'm like always making meals, always cooking. I have the earbuds in, I'm on call. So just like finding simple meals, and sometimes I do spend a little bit more on like takeout or, Amazon Prime or whatever. But just trying to make it a little bit easier for myself, because it's like, let's face it, like 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You have 2 kids, that's 6 meals, lots of kitchen time. There's just better use of my time than chopping carrots at this time in my life. So I'll have a meal day or 2 here and there, and then I just try to do like easy things. So I don't really have any great advice, but that's the best I got.
I think that was great advice. There's a ton that I took away from that. And, choosing what you want to do versus what you want to delineate to someone else, right? You talked about that with your team, trusting them to do showings, trusting them to help you with comps. I think letting go of some of that and being able to, trust in your team probably helps tremendously. Same thing with meals and laundry. And I loved when you said that, you are present. Sometimes you have to take a work call, but then that is showing your kids how important it is to work, and that you can do both things, and you can do both things successfully. So they're really learning a lot from you, even though you might not think that they are. So I like that. I loved that.
I took, thank you. I took my daughter away on a girls' trip a few weeks ago. I said, you know what, let's just go out of town. We went out east. We had one of her friends had a place. We booked a few nights out there. And I was expecting to just have like girls' time with her, but I got a call from one of my sellers, and I told him like in front of my daughter, like the contracts are signed, and like this person, it changed his life. And my daughter is on speaker. I'm going to like cry just talking about it. And, he was like going through some stuff, and he's like, you have no idea like what this is going to do for me, for my family, for where I'm going right now. Like he just needed this sale. And, a lot of people think like, oh man, these guys, they had such a great run. They have all this money. They have this. It's like, more money, more problem. So they were in a time where they really needed this sale. And for me to like have my daughter hear me deliver, this type of news to someone that's been trying to sell for 3 years. I've been the 3rd broker on it. Was like kind of, like a pinch me moment for me to just have her like hear,
Yeah. Oh, I got chills again. I'm getting so many chills. I love that you're bringing this, emotional aspect to real estate, and especially commercial real estate, right? A lot of people just get under this assumption that it's just deals and it's just back and forth and, it's just trading versus kind of that emotional aspect. And, hearing stories like that and the one you shared earlier, it just kind of makes someone's life or makes someone's day. And especially for your daughter here, that is awesome. So getting more onto that topic, into the nuts and bolts of the commercial real estate industry, you've made incredible waves as the leader of SERHANT's commercial division. So walk us through the origin story of creating the branch of the company, what caused it, what challenges were getting involved, obviously starting it. So give us a little 30,000-foot overview of the early days.
Sure. Where do I start? I signed up here in November of 2022, right? Yeah. I signed here, so almost 2 years ago. It was like right around now that we were like talking and considering onboarding, and I had a bunch of commercial exclusives that weren't like big buildings or anything. And I had met with, the SERHANT team here that was, the agent team. And they were like, do you do any residential? And I was like, yeah, I could do residential. But I have this commercial. And we're just like, it was a vibe. We're like, okay, let's try this. And like I shared earlier, I had been put in a very strange situation where I was representing clients that had recommended me to this seller at 19 West 55th Street. And I was a $50 million building. It's like, I had done so many cold pitches, and I was like, kind of like, this, I'm not going to get this. And I really didn't think that anyone was going to like sign no questions asked without like legal on the spot. But I had this opportunity. I had filled up a building in Greenpoint, Brooklyn for an owner post-COVID that had really difficult time filling his building. I did it very quickly and it just worked well. And that owner recommended me to this seller. And I drove my truck out to Brooklyn and I parked in front. And I walked up and I was like, I'm not getting this. But I told him that story. I said, I see your stress. I will take that stress. You can remove it from your shoulders right now and I will help you. And he signed on the spot. So then my first email to Ryan was like, hi, my name is Bernadette. I mean, he had already scouted me, but like officially as an agent, like, hey, not sure if you remember me, but this is the new listing I just signed. And he was like, what is that? What unit? I'm like, no, the whole building I signed. And like 19 West 55th Street, it's like, it's in the Plaza District. It's across the street from Dolce & Gabbana, Harry Winston, Trump, Ralph Lauren. I mean, you name it, it's on the block. So it's like a super iconic address, right off Fifth Avenue. And I was like, the whole building. And that was like when we're like, what do we do now? So we were only a residential brokerage. We only had platforms to launch, properties residentially. And I just became like a Houdini trying to figure out how to, change some of our systems internally and get this out and how to do it. And then somehow like when you're doing it, it looks so good to the public. And so then everyone was like, wow. And then Ryan had a client in Tribeca and they had called us. And so then we listed that. And I kept saying to myself, like, if I have 3, like maybe 1's a coup. Maybe 2 is like, Ryan just kind of helped me with this second one. I always said like 3 or more, we'll start talking about something. And then I got a 3rd, and then I got a 4th, and I got a 5th. And it just became this buzz because it's like when you can actually marry the marketing engine that we are at SERHANT with being a traditional commercial broker, and you can tie those two together, it's like fireworks. It's like untouchable. Like I literally in every pitch, I'm like, you cannot touch this. Like it is something that we're not just going to put you on commercial platforms. We're not just going to put you on, Crexi and CoStar and hope someone calls. We're going to be marketing you to the largest audience. We're the most followed real estate brand in the world. It sells itself. 9, actually almost all, with the exception of one big lease we did recently, they're all direct owner user sales. Every single one of them. And it's not that we don't co-broke. We're happy to co-broke. It's just that we can figure out and have figured out how to get to end users. So that's how we started building it. And we're still here now, just kind of, figuring out, working with my president, working with our sales director, working with Ryan, just to push out, some commercial offerings. Because right now, like, we're the new kid on the block. We're the shiny toy that everybody's looking at. And, agents are like, gosh, if I could list a 50 or 60 or 70 or $100 million building, like, let's go. And they started calling me. All the agents in the company were like, hey, I have a grandma that has a pizzeria. I have an uncle that has a dentist's office. I have a friend's cousin that has this vet building in Brooklyn. And it was just like coming in and coming in and coming in. And it's just not my nature to ever say no. So even though like we should have been slowing down, I was like, let's go. I know how to do this. Let's go. I told every single agent that called me, let's go. Let's do this. I'd do the pitch with them. I'd do the setup. I'd get the listing. And we created something called List and Assist that we're going to roll out, which is helping our agents to list commercial properties and assisting them to launch them, properly into the marketplace. And that's what you had talked about a little earlier in my introduction of the $200 million worth of listings that we've secured from residential brokers here.
I absolutely love that. And I mean, it's a huge success story and just a really great testament to you, who you are as a leader. So, talk to us as the managing director. How do you approach mentoring your team and fostering an environment of growth and success? I mean, you mentioned it, not saying no, being open, letting people come to you, but just give us maybe some qualities of an effective leader in the commercial real estate space. Give us a little bit of your secret sauce.
Well, those things are all true, except not for my team. With my team, I'm hardcore.
Okay. I love it. I love it. I am too.
I mean, I'm probably not the easiest to work for. I'm very approachable, which I think sometimes is my secret sauce. But then if you're actually going to work for me, like, I expect work. And I have a really high bar. So if you want to come here and you want to actually learn, you're going to learn like nobody. Like Izzy, who's on my team, he just started doing commercial. He was only doing residential. I love the way he worked. I loved his follow-up. And on some of my bigger listings now, I've added him to it just because he's so great at following up. He's so great at following back. He's so great at following through. And then, Jade, and she's been on our team from the beginning. She is her own, entity, and she's the star of the show, Netflix, and she's got her own social media thing going. So she's definitely like one of our more seasoned commercial agents that we have. And then we're really, we have Madison, who's also another social media influencer. She's been running a lot of ops for us. But, most of these guys had never really been on a big listing before. So I gave Jade all her listings. I gave Izzy his listings, Madison her listings, Vic's gotten listings. And now they're starting to also and now Shaw is also a new agent that we just signed. So our team is growing, and we are now, because we had so much lead overflow, which is so great, I was able to divvy out listings and leads to our team. But now we just had a meeting about like, I don't only want our listings to be coming through my funnel. So we're all going to, including myself, just start pitching and cold calling more, because I do think this is a really important time, like to market stuff in the fall before it becomes like the winter season. So for our team, like the main thing is my depth of knowledge. So they always know they can come to me. They always know they can ask me a question. Like I always say to them, like, ask me and we'll troubleshoot it. And we'll keep it in the room, so that way you can go out and know what you're talking about and not have any questions about how to approach your clients. That's something that's like pretty big. So almost everyone on my team regularly is just like, this is what's going on here. What should we do here? What should we do here? And, because I did work for a law firm for 10 years and my brokerage was under the law firm, I have like a certain understanding of the law and of real estate that maybe isn't so traditional, but it has been beneficial. So we're always kind of like thinking through a lot of stuff, like I shared earlier, thinking through what the seller's thinking through like market analytics, thinking through listing prices for us has really become crucial. Like in the beginning, we were taking more listings on that were a little bit more overpriced, and now we're like really trying to be like to the penny on what we're going to be listing, because we just want to be effective in the market. So yeah, I think like our team has figured out a way how to list properties really well, how to make them look good, and then how to troubleshoot internally any of the hiccups of any deals. And that allows the team to go out and amplify strength and get more listings and get more business.
Sure. I love that. I mean, just your depth of knowledge is so clear, even just talking through all of this with us here today. But being able to be approachable, I think, is great, but also being able to hold your team accountable, right? I don't do well with lazy. So if you're going to, learn and I'm giving you all of this knowledge that you can acquire from, me or my team, et cetera, then I want you to put in just as much work to make sure that you continuously earn that spot. So I really think that's beautiful. And it's a really good balance and a really good mix. So walk us through the company's methodology a little bit, if you will. So share some of what makes SERHANT unique among brokerages and why you've leaned into this differentiation.
It's so clear. It's just the marketing. So our ability to market a property is just unlike anything else. So like right now I'm sitting in SERHANT. We have our own podcast studio. We have our own studios team. They came in, they set up the camera, they set up, the lines, they set up my headphones. They're making sure we're looking good. They'll come tomorrow. We're shooting on a new listing, 325 West Broadway. We have 2 retails. So the studios team will come and they'll shoot photos. The video team will come and we'll shoot an actual property tour. They'll have drones there probably circulating from the sky. We'll be mic'd up. And then we're going to push it out on SERHANT's platforms to whatever, 6-7 million viewership. So we are the most followed real estate brand in the world. And it's like our calling card every single day. So it's like, for me, once you get the pitch down, and if you, I don't want to say lucky enough to have me in your corner, but I do have a depth of knowledge. So if you're able to know what you're doing commercially, and then you're able to partner with a brand that can market you like no one else, like no one's going to say no. So That's kind of what has become our secret sauce, is just tapping into all the resources here, sharing with our sellers what listing with us will look like, and it looks really good. And then marrying those two together, and that's just been, that's my driver. It's very simple. That's like my elevator pitch, 30 seconds, in and out. We are the most followed real estate brand in the world. We'll cover your property like no one else can. We'll cover you both commercially as well as to our high net worth end users, and market you like you couldn't ever be marketed in another company. And, most of the time sellers are going to say, you know what, we want that. And honestly, like almost all of my listings, they're calling me because they're seeing us on the block. They're seeing our signage. They're seeing our marketing. They're seeing us in their DMs. They're seeing our Instagram. They're seeing our property tours. So I actually have somebody right now I'm courting who they have not signed with me. And they called me. They're like, we saw what you're doing on the block. And I'm like, yeah, I'm in contract. I'm like, are you ready to sign? And they're like, oh, we're thinking. And I'm like, but you called me. So I think like sometimes, but everybody comes to stuff in their own time. So that's just been our secret sauce, is just figuring out our marketing with the traditional commercial platforms, blending them together, and then giving your property the best chances for sale.
Absolutely. And that's a beautiful combination. So one thing always on top of mind of brokerages is how to build trust with clients, right? So I know you have the background in real estate law. So how do you build trust with clients, especially those who are facing difficult situations, either foreclosures or court proceedings? What are some of the things that go into that, and how are you building trust in that way, especially with your background in real estate law?
I think that's what it is because I have a background in real estate law, it's easy to trust me. So most brokers would be like, I don't know how to deal with a foreclosure. I don't know how to deal with the bank. I'm uncomfortable in court. I don't know what to do. I don't like, animosity. The sellers are going through very tough times. But for me, it's like where I swing. So it's like home for me. It's like home base. So as soon as that is what initially and instantly will connect me with clients. So it's like, I feel like if you're going through a tough time, I am your broker, because I've also went through tough times, and I am not going to glamorize this process. So really being real about like, these guys they're losing their shirts. Like anybody right now that is trying to sell post-COVID, that was doing something pre-COVID, is underwater for the most part and upside down. So showing up in that way, like from the get-go, like, I know that you're going through a hard time. I see what's happening. please know you're not the only one. This is a story that I talk about and tell every single day with every single one of my sellers. So like identifying immediately that they're not alone is like makes them like initially so caught off guard because they're like so isolated in their own mind. They're thinking like, you know, they're the only ones. So when you remove that, you remove like any of like the shame or burden or, you know, whatever they're going through, and you make it like you normalize it. So for me, I'm like, you are like every other seller that I talk to every single day. Like, please don't think that you've done anything wrong or that, you know, this is bad times. No one thought the pandemic was going to happen. So really just, that's how I build my trust, is through my experience and then being able to like connect personally with their story. And it's like very organic. It just happens like I can't even explain it, but I also think like I had to come to a place in my career to have that be like the inevitable result of my meetings. So it took many years to hone that. So it's like I can give you tips there, but the actual experience of going through these things is what's going to set you apart in these bigger situations. You know, I think if you've never sold, you know, a commercial space, maybe don't start with a $50 million bank foreclosure. But that's just me. But I think that, you know, like there's steps for everything. And I also think like one of the biggest, this is off topic, but one of the biggest things that I train my team on is, and they all see my big listings. So they all want those big, big listings. And like one or two of them recently was like, oh, I don't know if I want to take that. That's too small. And like that drove me crazy. Like I was like, nothing's too small, because in my mind, those things that are 75 million are going to take forever to transact. And there's so much business to be had in the smaller, like sub 5 million, sub 10 million deals. You can do those and they're lovely paychecks. So I had said to, you know, someone I was working with recently, like, I don't think you should be waiting for a $20 or $30 million commercial listing when respectfully you have never traded a commercial property before. So like I would be taking that $500,000 listing, $400,000 little medical space, whatever it is, and using that to hone your skills and get the bigger listings. And then, you know, bigger listings get bigger listings, get bigger listings. And I just think it's like a building block. So I never think like no one starts at the top of a ladder. I think it's really important that you climb the ladder. And anyone that just wants to jump to the top, you're just going to tip over and fall. So like having those steps, I think is so important. Like you'll see right now, if you go to my page, you'll see a $75 million listing. You'll see a $500,000 listing. I believe in servicing the client. So one of those small listings that some may not want to take had another listing, which they didn't tell you at first, but it was like a building for $14 million in Chelsea that we may or may not be getting. But if I didn't help him and I wasn't and it was actually like a lease that they wanted us to do, and I took it. So then I built trust with the owner, and then he says, oh, by the way, I have this townhouse that maybe I might be selling. Do you want to come check it out? So, you know, maybe I'll get it, maybe I won't, but I would have never even had the opportunity had I just said no straight up to like a $500,000 listing, which also I think is crazy that anyone would even say no to, because like when you're getting started, those are important listings, you know?
Absolutely. I think that you hit on a lot of different things. I mean, building trust means being knowledgeable, being experienced, right? Taking all of the at-bats as you can, and then treating those clients just the same as you would a $500,000 listing or that $14 million listing, right? Because you never know what people have and, you know, if they're showing you all your cards at first. Yeah. So, you know, understanding their need, treating them with the same respect as you treat someone else. So I love hearing that. Perfect. So can you give us a little insight on some of the current trends in the commercial real estate market and some that you find most exciting or on the controversial aspect concerning?
Current trends. Well, I think like the biggest one is owner financing. Right now, financing is an issue for most traditional commercial products. So we can get something into contract, but it doesn't mean it's going to get financing. I am very leery to lean on owner financing initially because I think it starts a conversation off not beneficial to the sellers. But I do think to have that in the back of your pocket at some points, one of our recent transactions or one of our recent building sales, we had to do a portion of owner financing because the building isn't going to appraise for the monetary value that we're securing. So that is a trend I'm seeing right now, is maybe getting the majority of it financed and then having a smaller portion of it owner financing, just so you can hit the number of what the bank is willing to lend on. But it's really, like I said, not something I like to lean on just because it's not always beneficial to the seller, and they usually just want to try to get their money and get out. If structured correctly, though, it is an additional income for the seller, and so they can capitalize on that. But that is one of the trends that I've seen more recently. And what was the other question?
If there was any one in particular that you find exciting or concerning.
I'm trying to think about what other trends there are. The other trend is the office to resi conversion for vacant office buildings that everyone is just trying to figure out what's going to happen with. So we do have a lot of vacant office in the city, and everyone trying to figure out what to do with it. So there's lots of conversations about what those conversions will look like, how to get them greenlit. There's a lot of legislation right now being discussed and proposed for variances and for additional air rates or floor area ratio, additional FAR. So those are things right now that are kind of trending topics that people are watching, but we're not really at a place yet to see how that's going to pan out. Depending on the floor plate, a lot of traditionalists tend to think that the conversion isn't going to really be cost effective because of, the floor plate and then the light and air restrictions and other things that go into it. But that is definitely something right now that is a buzz happening within like the commercial office sector.
Yeah, absolutely. So what advice would you give to someone who's starting out in the commercial real estate industry today? Maybe how to navigate some of these, or just general advice for them?
Well, my first piece of advice for sure would be to do some commercial rentals. So even just learning what a commercial commission structure looks like for rentals is something so abstract and different from a residential transaction. So I think it's important to know and start to learn what you don't know. And I think the best way to do that is just getting into some rentals. Also, it's interesting to point out, but in commercial, the landlord will always pay the agent's fee. So when I started, it was important that I found landlords that would pay my fee, because I'm like, who's going to pay me? Like, nobody knows me. I'm with a small brokerage. I'm this, young person that doesn't know anything. So why would anyone pay me? That was always my thought. But then I'm like, if a landlord will pay me, then maybe I can market that, and then I can get clients, because they're thinking like I'm working for free for them, and I am. So just like running ads in different classifieds, even, believe it or not, like Craigslist. You know how many deals I did on Craigslist? I can't even tell you. My first building sale came from Craigslist, actually. I had put on a listing. It was a for sale by owner. It was the Rubel family. It was a very long time ago. I didn't have the exclusive. And I put it up on Craigslist, and I was driving with my daughter and my husband to Florida. And someone called, had a very thick accent. He tells me, "You saw this on Craigslist." I was like, this guy's not a buyer. And I wouldn't give him the address because I didn't have the exclusive. But he figured it out himself, and he drove past, and he's like, "I want this." And then I was like, well, I'm driving back, from Florida. My husband doesn't drive, so we're driving. I could be back in like 2 days. But in my mind, I was like, this guy is not real. Like, this is not a thing. And it was. And we closed. I think it was 348 West 38th Street. I closed it 9 months pregnant, like maybe 4 days before my son was born. And they were stressing me out so much. It was such a tough deal. I remember telling the buyer, like, you're going to put me in the hospital early. Like, we have got to close this thing. A survey came back at like 6 inches below what it was supposed to be, which would then not allow for an elevator in the building. And then, it was such a challenging deal. But my advice would be to start small, start with leasing. Don't be afraid to, as you feel ready, to approach things that are for sale by owner and try to get your feet wet there. But I think there's so much knowledge to be had when getting into commercial, particularly in New York, because it's a tough market and it's not for the weak. But I think starting to do commercial rentals is probably a good place to start.
You've heard it here first. So moving into our last topic for today, given your background and expertise, I'm sure our listeners are curious about your answers to a few rapid fire / words of advice questions. Okay. Are you ready? Okay. First, if you were given $50 million today and you had to invest it immediately, what would your go-to asset type and location be and why?
My go-to asset type would probably be vacant office, because you can get it for pennies to the dollar right now, and you know it's going to come back. So, and the area would probably be Midtown. I would, of course, definitely. Smart buyers right now are buying that up, and the second thing I would always recommend is multifamily. Any place in Manhattan proper or even Brooklyn is a sound bet there.
Absolutely. Second question, and I promise this is not a trick question. What is your favorite tool or software that you use on the job?
Okay. Well, you guys do know I love Crexi. But I think my favorite tool is actually simple. It's S.MPLE, which is our assistant-led AI-driven software that we're piloting here at SERHANT. So I actually have my own assistant that is AI-powered but managed through SERHANT staff. So they run comps for me. They do my news feeds. They do my listing pitches now. They really do even more than I'm even used to using them for. But, last week I asked them to just get like news for me and do research. They pulled like 5 or 10 different news feeds for New York City. That becomes like a way that we market. Simple has become something that I'm going to regularly for just administrative and marketing help.
That's amazing. Wonderful. Yeah. And then third but final question is, what is the most common misconception about your job or industry?
So the most common misconception about my job is probably that we just make a ton of money. And while we do make money in between commission checks, it can sometimes be lean. So I think the most common misconception is that, we just sell things every day and we're just rolling around in money. And the truth of the matter is that any deal to pull off in commercial real estate is a feat in itself. And there are difficult, challenging deals that take a lot of hard work and follow through. And I think that's a misconception is, you see these big listings, you assume they sell every day. You assume there's, tens of millions of dollars in commission checks just, accruing. And the truth of the matter is that it costs a lot of money to run your business and run your agent team. And there's a lot of tools that you have to pay for. And there's a lot of expenses that go into marketing your listings. And, if you're lucky, the check might come, but it might take months. Sometimes, I've been on some of my bigger listings for over a year. So that's the most common misconception, I think. Things sell overnight and you become a millionaire.
Right. Absolutely. It takes the hard work, their perseverance, and everything that you just talked about with us today. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights. We know you're very, very busy, so we truly appreciate you sitting down and taking the time out of your busy day to talk with us. Where can people find you online? Sorry. Yeah, of course. Where can people find you if they want to get in touch? Email, social media, give us all the goods.
Okay. You can find me on my email, which is Bernadette@serhant.com. My Instagram handle is mombossnyc. or you can find my mobile, which is on our website. And you can also find all of my listings at serhant.com.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much once again. And thanks to everyone who tuned in today. If you enjoyed this episode, do not miss the next one. Visit Crexi.com/podcast and sign up to get the next episode delivered straight to your inbox. Of course, you can always subscribe to the Crexi Podcast on your favorite podcast app and check out our YouTube channel for video recordings of each episode. Take care and be sure to tune in next time.